Where are we at?
What was that?
Where are we at?
What you
Besides, I
got
know
for
we're in
us?
Zechariah.
Oh, I could say I'm at Kelso.
Yeah, I'm in the lower part. I'm in the ghetto.
The ghetto. Oh,
I'm in Mount St. Helens.
yeah. We're chapter 10. We kind of interested in I don't know if it's an awkward spot, but it probably worked okay. We ended up, I probably need to share my screen. So I hate it when I'm selfish that way. So, okay. I assume you see Zechariah 10. Is that what you see?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I had something else open too. I didn't know if I'm going to make sure I was sharing the right thing. So,
Yeah.
okay,
Restoration of Judah and Israel.
there you go. It's kind of Zechariah is really interesting because we see a lot of things where the Lord is trying to encourage the people. We've seen that practically every chapter where He's trying to encourage them, and but we also come to these spots where it's like, oh, that's not so encouraging. But like here, where last week we were talking about He was going to punish the bad shepherds, and we'll see some more of that today. But He was going to. Then we saw about from Judah comes the cornerstone, the tent peg, the battle bow, the one who would rule and reign eventually, who would defend Judah and Israel. And today in verse 6, we pick up with that. And they look like, some very, very encouraging words here, which kind of sets up for chapter 11 coming up, that some of those words don't look so encouraging. But and I think we see in 6 here, one of those places again where there was probably some near-term partial fulfillment, but a lot of it probably looks really toward the millennial reign. But just because of some of the words in here, that some of these things have not really happened in their fulfillment yet. So, and there's some of the things. If you feel like I probably have you guys read, so I'm not doing all the reading and stuff. But if you feel like you have words to contribute or insight, please do that. If you read and you go, I don't understand what I just read, that's fine too. So, George, would you like to read? Let's see here. Yeah, 6, 7, and 8.
Okay. Love to. I will strengthen the house of Judah, and I will save the house of Joseph. I will bring them back because I have mercy on them. They shall be as though I had not cast them aside, for I am the Lord their God, and I will hear them. Those of Ephraim shall be like a mighty man, and their heart shall rejoice as if with wine. Yes, their children shall see it and be glad. Their heart shall rejoice in the Lord. I will whistle for them and gather them, and I will redeem them, and they shall increase as they once increased. Well, these three chapters seem very optimistic. He's strengthening the people. He is saving the people in Judah and Joseph. He's bringing them back. I imagine he's bringing them back to their home because he has mercy on them. And they shall be, though I had not cast them aside. So it's like I haven't done anything negative to them. I'm bringing them back, and maybe it's like a start over. I don't know. For I am the Lord their God, and obviously God can do what he wants, and we will follow. And I will hear them. Those of Ephraim shall be like a mighty man, and their heart shall rejoice as if with wine. So obviously he's strengthening them again, and he's making them rejoice and be joyful. And their children will see it and be glad. Their heart shall rejoice in the Lord. So everybody's coming back together and worshiping the Lord. And I will whistle for them and gather them, for I will redeem them. And once again, the Lord is redeeming them. and that they are going to increase and be prosperous as they have in the past.
Very good. Like you say, those very encouraging words, aren't they? So,
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting and number 8, I will whistle for them.
yeah.
Don't remember, I mean, it's interesting that don't remember seeing that before.
Well, I would assume, like when they call a dog, I would imagine that shepherds always do that, also do that for sheep. He's whistling and gathering in the flock.
That's good, George, because that's what that is. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they have that sound that they recognize. No, Jesus said, "My sheep know my voice."
Right.
So they're whistling.
Reference to Isaiah 5:26, he will lift up a banner to the nations from afar and will whistle to them from the end of the earth. Surely they shall come with speed swiftly.
Yeah. And a lot of times when you see like the house of Joseph, and then you see Ephraim down here. Joseph had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And either one of those, the house of Joseph, Ephraim, sometimes we'll find it other places in the scripture too, where that's synonymous with the northern kingdom. Remember the breakaway of Israel and Judah. So a lot of times we see Ephraim, it's a reference to the northern kingdom. And if I remember, and it just dawned on me as we're reading here, if I remember right, when Jacob was about to pass away, he brought in all of his sons and gave them blessings. And if I remember right, this is very similar to the blessing that he gave to Ephraim. So it's kind of like the Lord is saying, "Yep, that'll come to pass." And
Yeah, that was kind of out of place. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, and this is really, I think, important that the Lord's going to have mercy on them. Nowhere in here does he say because they deserve it. And the same is true with us. He had mercy on us.
Exactly.
So that part has never changed for them or for us, that he has mercy on us. And they shall be as though I had not cast them aside. Which to me indicates that, yes, in a sense, he had cast them aside. And as we read through here, we'll find out they're in that state right now, in a sense. The whistling is taking place, and they are coming back. And as we go through the next verse, we're going to find out is that even though this partial, because he was still bringing some of his people back from the different lands they'd gone into, this has not been totally fulfilled yet, because they get dispersed again. Okay.
They say there more and more people, more and more Jews are going back to Israel.
Yeah. The worse things get, the more of them that go back to Israel. And I think the Lord's behind that too, using that to bring them back. So
Sure.
We'd like to think that the whistling is just like he whistled and they all got it right, and now they're all heading back to Israel to worship God in the land. It's not the case so far. But they do have that inner yearning to come back to the land. So
my good friend and neighbor, he's going back to get a citizenship there, so he'll have a dual citizenship.
all right, good.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
he literally just told me this like a week ago.
Yeah, interesting. With that in mind, Jim, you'd like to read 9 through 12, finish that chapter up. So.
Sure. I will sow them among the peoples, and they shall remember me in far countries. They shall live together with their children, and they shall return. I will also bring them back from the land of Egypt and gather them from Assyria. I will bring them into the land of Gilead and Lebanon until no more room is found for them. He shall pass through the sea with affliction and strike the waves of the sea. All of the depths of the river shall dry up, and the pride of Assyria shall be brought down, and the scepter of Egypt shall depart. So I will strengthen them in the Lord, and they shall walk up and down in his name, says the Lord. Yeah, it's like a big promise from God, and encouraging for them to want to return and seek the Lord in the homeland. That's about
Yeah.
all I got.
Yeah. And you notice he says, I
Hey,
will
Rick.
sow them among the peoples. Go ahead, whoever was going to speak there. So,
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to bring up as far as them sowing them among the peoples, dispersing them kind of like the 144,000 or.
well, that's definitely going to happen at some point. And I don't know how that comes about that he gets to 144,000, that's going to be marked and sealed. We do know that there's more. It's not as prominent as we'd like to see it among the people in Israel that are actually turning to Christ, finding that Jesus is the Messiah. But we know that's going to change at some point, just from reading the book of Revelation. That
Sure.
that's
Well,
going to change.
is the 144,000 just to preach to the Jews? I'm curious. Or is it for
My
all the
understanding
people?
is they'll be preaching. There'll be testimony all over. That's my understanding.
Okay.
That's a good
Okay.
question, though, Joe. So, I would assume there'd be a lot of emphasis there in the Holy Land, wouldn't you?
Sure. Yeah. With the
Yeah.
percentage of people that are agnostic or atheist or whatever.
Yeah. It says that I will. So the Lord is saying, I'll do the sowing. So I'm putting them out there, and they'll remember me in far countries. And they'll live together, their children, they shall return. So we see a lot of that going on. We know they're all over the world. Even though there's a lot of like agnostics among them, it's amazing though that even in all the lands, as much as they can, they still celebrate a lot of their holidays. They don't celebrate, I'm not sure. I know some of them do Passover in some form. They obviously can't do it the way the Bible described, but they, take the lamb out to the altar and kill it. And but they do have Passover meals. Uh, my understanding is they don't even use lamb because they realize they can't do the sacrifice part right. So you're bringing them back from
Well-
Egypt, from Assyria, basically saying from everywhere.
So today is the first day of Lent, Ash Wednesday.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, that's right.
you got me. I guess so.
Yeah, it is. There's an interesting thing here about he's bringing the people out of Egypt and out of Assyria, but it's not so great for Egypt and Assyria because their pride is going to be brought down and the scepter of Egypt shall depart.
Yeah. Yeah, they will. Well, there'll be that point where, especially when Jesus is ruling and reigning, that none of these other countries will be the prominent country. It will be Israel will be the prominent country. And when we talked about he, I had to research it, but that's talking about the Lord himself, will be doing, in a sense, miraculous ways of bringing the people back. So we talked about the sea with affliction. There's a lot of them that's coming back to the land because they have been afflicted. And you see some resemblance here to like the ways of the sea, the depths of the river. You see some analogy there to the Red Sea, the Jordan. In other words, the Lord will be doing things that we may not even see them ourselves, all the events, but to be miraculous situations where the people are able to actually get back to Israel. So it says, I'll strengthen them in the Lord, in him own self, then they'll walk up and down his name. I think like the people I looked at, they're thinking about that they walk up and down in his name is the time coming when they will actually be able to have a worldly influence in the name of the Lord himself. In other words, they will be believers ruling and reigning with Christ. So. So the people haven't forgotten them. That this is maybe kind of a side note. I don't even know how I got onto it the other day, but you know, they have a mixed bag of people over there, so to speak. You got atheists, you got some Christians, not a whole lot. You got a couple of different groups of Orthodox Jews. There's the Temple Institute group that are actually now creating the artifacts isn't the right word, the implements, bowls and things that supposedly go in the temple when it's built. There's another set of those that you've heard of Zionists being a Zionist, but it's actually some of those Orthodox Jews that are almost anti-Zionist because they don't believe that Israel even has the right to exist as a nation yet until the Messiah comes. And they believe that the Messiah, when the Messiah comes, he will build the temple. And the Temple Institute people kind of lean toward, we need to get the temple started and the Messiah will come back and help us build it. Not come back, but come, because they don't believe he's ever come yet. So basically the Orthodox Jews are still looking for a Messiah. And part of the evidence of who the Messiah is, recognize him, will be the fact that the temple somehow is going to be involved in that. Which kind of sets up for some of the scenes we see in the book of Daniel and in Revelation about them being fooled by the Antichrist. So, because the Antichrist will be involved in the temple somehow, and it will eventually set himself up in the temple. So we'll see a little bit of that coming up in this next chapter. So, you guys got any more things you want to ask about or talk about this here in chapter 10? So. Nope. Okay. So we'll move to chapter 11. So. Joe, I'll give you a fun one to read if you want to, these first 3 verses.
Sure. Okay. Open your doors, O Lebanon, that fire may devour your cedars. Wail, O Cypress, for the cedar has fallen. Because the mighty trees are ruined, wail, O oaks of Bashan, for the thick forest has come down. There is the sound of wailing shepherds, for their glory is in ruins. There is the sound of roaring lions, for the pride of the Jordan is in ruins. For the pride of the Jordan, is that the river? As far as the pride of the Jordan?
Yeah. Floodplain, the thicket. Okay. Yeah, so that would be the areas along the Jordan, really.
Okay, kind of like the Nile plain, sort of, as far as areas go. Okay, so open your doors, O Lebanon. Just previously we read that he's bringing the people back to Gilead, which is the other side of the Jordan River, right? And also to Lebanon. So this must be after that fact, as far as bringing these people back.
Well, actually, yeah, fire. This is actually we're starting to move into, and the title on here is actually a very good title for what follows in this chapter here. So we're going from chapter 10, where it was like a lot of good stuff, you know, to get people's hopes up.
Yeah.
And now we're going to be looking at some prophecy that has to deal with not so good stuff. So these things here are really not good things.
No, not at all. But so Lebanon isn't theirs right now, unless we're following from what we just read, that he's going to put them in Lebanon. So that will be their land, I'm guessing, along with the other side of the Jordan River, which is Gilead, right?
Actually, Gilead is
Bashan.
I think Gilead is the Golan Heights. So
Golan, up north, Syria.
Syria, yeah.
Okay.
Gilead is in Syria, yeah.
And then Bashan is also on the east side of Jordan, right? As far as that king of.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So lots of forest, lots of coverage or foliage that's going to be dust. Sound of the Wailing Shepherds. Yeah, bad things are going to happen. I lost my commentary here. Sorry. Reopen that.
What I've kind of been able to ascertain myself, if we go back to chapter 10, and this will, I will sow them among the peoples. I think this verse 9 actually fits in with this. I think this is speaking, what's the right word? Allegorically or picturesque in a sense. And
Okay.
this is actually going to deal, this chapter, if we can keep in mind, it will eventually deal with Jesus's time, and right after Jesus's time, with the Romans coming in to basically destroy the land. And they do actually, when they come in, they're coming down through Lebanon. And I think the picture is here, and I did some research. The Romans never actually burned down the cedars or anything. Nobody actually destroyed. In fact, the Romans in the long term actually, because Lebanon was famous for cedars. Remember, a lot of them were moved into the temple. They used a lot of the cedar in the temple, building the first temple, Solomon's temple. Rome actually set up preserves, forest preserves, to protect the cedars. So the picture here is, okay, open up your doors, O Lebanon, that fire may devour your cities. So Lebanon is where the Roman troops came in to finally deal with Israel. So they came in through Lebanon. And Lebanon was, there were actually Jews in Lebanon at that time. Lebanon hasn't always been totally separate from Israel. There's always been some kind of at least an agreement between those countries. So when it talks about your cedars, the cedars fallen, they're talking about, from what I understand, and I've tried to research and look at some other commentaries, that this would be like the leaders in that area. And that would be the main leaders, the cedars. And then the cypress was a lesser tree, but those would also be talking about leaders. So it would have been the leaders under the leaders, I guess, the hierarchy. And the mighty trees are ruined. And the area of Bashan was very famous for its oak trees. So I think the picture is here that Lebanon and Bashan is actually talking about the land itself being overtaken. And the trees are used as a picture, because that's what they were famous for, being used as a picture of the leaders, or the shepherds, the wailing shepherds, as it mentions down here. There's a sound of wailing shepherds. And as we've seen, I think back in 9 and 10, talking about the shepherds that weren't doing the job they were supposed to do. They were bad shepherds. It says their glory is in ruins. So whatever authorities they had, whatever positions of ruling they had, was done away with when the Romans came down through Lebanon and Bashan and came down into Israel. And the pride of the lions, actually, from what I understand, there were lions actually who lived in this area around the Jordan. But also there's a picture of the roaring lions. Could be that the lions themselves, the actual animals themselves, were roaring, but it also could be another picture of these shepherds, roaring lions and shepherds. Lions would be like the utmost of the leaders and the rulers. So it's kind of a picture here of the Romans coming down through and the desolation that follows them as they're coming into the land. So, and when we get into the prophecy of the shepherds, it's really interesting story here. We're going to see there were a couple other, Richard probably may name them right off, a couple of other prophets in the Old Testament that the Lord had act out some things, physical,
Ezekiel
was
would be one of them.
Yeah, and who was the one that had to marry the harlot?
Hosea.
Hosea. So they were called to do some physical things to show what the Lord was going to be doing or was doing. And here, the Lord is going to ask Zechariah to do some things that's going to point to the future. It's going to show bad shepherds, and it's going to point to the good shepherd. So as we read through there, we keep that in mind, and maybe we'll see the pictures now, knowing that ahead of time, that this is to point to the future, but it also probably points to in between time between Zechariah and the Lord appearing, the first time, about the bad shepherds, because they were a lot of them before the destruction of Jerusalem. So remember, Zechariah is not necessarily a shepherd by trade, but he's a prophet priest. So let's see how far down I'll have somebody read at one time. And I got a line highlighted in green here, not to distract you when you look at it, because I've got another line down below that I put in green so I can tie those two together. Remember to do that when we get there. Okay. So George, I think I'll have you read verse 4 through 6 there, if you don't mind. So
Okay. Thus says the Lord my God, feed the flock for slaughter, whose owners slaughter them and feel no guilt. Those who sell them say, Blessed be the Lord, for I am rich, and their shepherds do not pity them. For I will no longer pity the inhabitants of the land, says the Lord, but indeed I will give everyone into his neighbor's hand and into the hand of his king. They shall attack the land, and I will not deliver them from their hand. So I guess this is reflective of the shepherds, that they're feeding the flock for slaughter, and the owners will slaughter them and they will not feel bad about it. There will be no guilt. And then they will sell them and say, Blessed be the Lord, for I am rich. So they're saying that their richness is from God. And the shepherds do not pity them. So I'm assuming what that means is that the shepherds don't feel bad for the people that are rich and the people that are basically in control. For I will no longer pity the inhabitants of the land, says the Lord. So he's gone from building them up and building them strong. Now he's no longer going to pity them. And indeed, I will give everyone into his neighbor's hand and into the hand of his king. So he, instead of releasing them and bringing them back to Israel, he's turning them over to the leadership of the different areas, the different countries. And they shall attack the land, and I will not deliver them from their hand. So the Lord is not going to save them. He's going to allow them to be attacked.
very good. Now, the picture of the shepherd in the flock, if you think about it, we have people today, they raise flocks, they raise herds, they raise chickens, whatever, for slaughter. It's a legitimate practice, right? So even then, if you had sheep you were raising for the market, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with being blessed by the Lord by increasing your herd, right? So he's going to be dealing with sheep. The Lord's asking Zechariah to do this, okay? And I want you to be like the owner. I want you to have sheep that you're raising to be slaughtered. But the picture he's trying to do is now transferring to people as the sheep, as the flock. And you mentioned that as you went through there. But it's not a good thing that we would have people who feel like they kind of own the people or oversee the people, that in a sense are selling the people, and they are, and they get money out of it. They're getting rich off of it, and they think and they want to credit that to the Lord. The Lord is making me rich. They're getting rich off of the Lord's people, but the Lord's not the one making them rich. So think about see which one I got marked here. Is that it? Yeah. Here's just one example of what was going on. It says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For you neither go in yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and for pretense make long prayers. Therefore you will receive greater condemnation." Scribes and Pharisees were like shepherds, or supposed to be at that time. And they were supposed to be leading the people into the kingdom of heaven, not keeping them from going into heaven, the kingdom of heaven. But Jesus accuses them of they're not going in themselves, and they don't even allow the others to go in. And this one, and you might as well do this one too. This is also in Matthew. This is Matthew 23. That was also 23. Okay. And he says that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Assuredly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you are not willing. See, your house has left you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So Jesus is telling them, this is bad, 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 and the next time you see me, you'll be saying, blessed. This is after Palm Sunday when he's come in and they've already said, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And now he's saying, you won't see me again until you say this. And in Zechariah, coming up soon, we'll see where it talks about the people in Israel seeing the one whom they have pierced coming. So they will see him again, and they will actually change dress and go to blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So that day will come, but not for a while, at least 2,000 years so far. So we'll see Jesus attack. There's another one, just to show you what the shepherds were at this time, had become. And they hadn't just become that a few days before Jesus showed up. It's been going on a long time. So then he went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in it, saying to them, it is written, my house is a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. So when we look back here and say, feed the flock for slaughter, in a sense, the leaders of Israel had been not doing what they're supposed to do. So they're actually setting up the people for slaughter, and the slaughter is coming. And the owners, when it says owners here, obviously it's owners of the sheep, but those who should be in charge of protecting the sheep and doing what's good for the sheep, what they're doing, they're setting them up for slaughter. They don't even feel any guilt about what they're doing to the people. They're doing things, especially like in the temple. They're making money off the money changing stuff, and then they're getting rich, and they think the Lord is blessing them in their richness, and the shepherds have no pity over the people. And as a result, and we saw there Jesus saying it, I'll no longer have pity on the inhabitants of the land. That day is coming in those prophecies. So the time is coming. The things they did, I was reading yesterday some about we have people today within the church, quotation marks there, that are doing similar things with their flocks in their churches. They're fleecing the flocks. They name it and claim it or whatever. A bunch of them, they're making money off of the people, and they think that they're getting the Lord's blessing them because of what they're doing. And they tell the people, basically, if you follow my example, you can get rich too. So, and you notice the Lord said you have a greater condemnation. Ooh. So that could be applicable today in a lot of senses. And I guess if when Jesus came in and money changers stuff, people would coming in wanting to worship God. They would come in, let's say maybe with a dove or a pigeon, and they would examine that dove or the pigeon or whatever they brought in, or the sheep, and they'd find something wrong with it almost every time. So yours isn't good enough, but we have these over here. We've already certified. They're kosher. You can buy one of these. We'll take yours in exchange, but you're still going to have to pay some more money, whatever. So they were making money off the people that way. And also, I read that most of the money the people had would have been Roman money. Remember, Jesus said, whose name is whose picture is on the coin? Caesar.
Yeah.
Well, when it was time to do money changes in the temple, they didn't want the Roman money. They said that wasn't good enough for them to use to put into the temple, so they had to change it for the
Shekel.
the Jewish shekel. So, but then again, they're getting the Roman money and they're using it outside of the temple. So they were making money off of it by changing the money and also of the animals they brought in. So the people who wanted to worship the Lord are being fleeced. So the time is coming, the Lord says, I will give everyone into his neighbor's hand, into the hand of the king. Probably that would be referring to Caesar as we go down the sea here. And saying they shall attack the land and I will not deliver them. So it's kind of, sad to go from chapter 10 to this kind of comment. Somebody was going to say something. Who was it? Nobody? Okay.
Well, it just seems that that's just reflective of how the world continues to get more and more evil and more sinful.
Yeah. And I mean, Israel's already been through some of this stuff before, right? That's why they went into captivity to begin with. And we see, okay, now they're no longer into idol worship. That's been dealt with, but the people are still not treating their neighbors properly. They're still not doing justice, and they're not using fair scale, so to speak, which the Lord had mentioned earlier in Zechariah. That this is the things I want you to do. I want you to do these things, and the shepherds definitely are not doing that. And people follow the leaders' examples sometimes, and sometimes you get the leaders you get because of the people.
Yep.
Probably really true in our country. I guess, I don't know. Just we vote them in, right? So we see he's called to act this out. So that would have been a legitimate enterprise, so to speak, for Zechariah to do, to go shepherd a flock that was going to be slaughtered. Okay. So somehow, I'm not exactly sure how Zechariah gets this picture across to the people at that time, but looking back at it, we can definitely see the typology there. So we have an advantage in some sense on this side of the event. So, okay. Jim, how'd you like to read? I'm gonna give you a long one here, if you don't mind, 7 through 14 down here. But you're muted, Jim. We can't hear you. I can't read your lips that good. There you
Sorry, I
go.
couldn't find my mouse.
Yeah.
So let me get this a little bit bigger. So I fed the flock for slaughter, in particular the poor of the flock. I took for myself 2 staffs, the one I called Beauty, and the other one I called Bonds, and I fed the flock. I dismissed the 3 shepherds in 1 month. My soul loathed them, and their soul also abhorred me. Then I said, I will not feed you. Let what is dying die, and what is perishing perish. Let those that are left eat each other's flesh. Ew. And I took my staff Beauty, and I cut it in 2, that I might break the covenant which I made with all the peoples. So it was broken on that day. Thus the poor of the flock who were watching me knew that I was the word of the Lord. And I said to them, if it is agreeable to you, give me my wages, and if not, refrain. So they weighed out my wages, 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, that princely price they set on me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. Then I cut in 2 my other staff bonds, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. Wow.
Right there.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I don't know where to start, Ray.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's good. He does this. He's doing what the Lord asked him to do. So he's got a flock, and he's not talking about the people here as a flock. He's talking about sheep. Okay, remember, the sheep are a picture of the people. So he's feeding them for slaughter. And let's see what that C is. This is interesting. So these things here, MT, TG, VG, is the Vulgate, and the Septuagint says for the Canaanites, which is interesting. Says the poor of the flock. So I'm gonna go with the poor of the flock. I don't know how the Canaanites fit in this thing, but I think that would mean the people of the land.
Yeah.
There shouldn't have been a whole lot of Canaanites left by this point in time. So anyway, it took two staffs, one called Beauty, that's also Grace. That's a good word to remember for that one. And Bonds is Unity. So we got grace and unity. And you remember when Psalm 23 said, "Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." It was very common for shepherds in those days to have two staffs. And I guess they were even shaped different and used for different purposes. But so having the two staffs would have been normal for a shepherd. And he named them Beauty, and he named the other one Bonds, or Grace and Unity. And he said, "And I fed the flock." Now, this is Zechariah talking about himself. This is not the Lord saying, "I fed the flock for slaughter." It's not saying that the Lord took myself two staffs. And you notice that myself would have been capitalized if it's talking about the Lord. So it's not talking about the Lord. So it says, "I, Zechariah, dismissed the three shepherds in 1 month. My soul loathed them, and their soul also abhorred me." So it would seem that there were three shepherds somehow involved with this flock that Jeremiah is overseeing. It's probably not uncommon. If flock big enough, you got some other shepherds working with you. We're not told who the shepherds were or anything. It probably doesn't matter at this point. But anyway, there was three that he did not like and three that did not like him. Now, remember, this is pointing toward Rome. It's also pointing toward the first advent of the Messiah. And so then the question becomes, who are the three shepherds as is projecting into the future? And it's interesting. There's not a whole, there's some agreement, some of the agreement, people are trying to figure out who the three shepherds are because it doesn't name them into the future. But there's a good one, I think, it's in Luke. Yeah, this is Jesus talking, and this is Luke 9. And I'll read verse 22. It says, "Saying, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed and be raised the third day." We do know that when Jerusalem fell, there were no longer elders and chief priests and scribes. So it could be those three shepherds that are being dismissed. And they were definitely the ones who were, the elders would have included the Sanhedrin. Okay. So when you think of those, so I lean and several people lean toward it being these types of shepherds that were prevalent in Jesus's day that were no longer after the fall of Jerusalem. The scribes and the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all that went away. So it's possible looking forward, those three shepherds that the Lord himself dismissed, another word is destroyed or cut off. So those offices basically have been cut off at this time in history. So they no longer are there. So, and obviously we saw that those three that we just looked at in Luke abhorred and loathed the Lord and abhorred the Lord. So they were constantly against him, even though we do know that out of those groups, some of them got saved after the resurrection. So, okay. So he's doing that. Now as a shepherd again, Zechariah is talking. He said, I will not feed you. Let what is dying die, and what is perishing perish. So in other words, he's kind of letting the flock go. Whoa. Let those that are left eat each other's flesh. that's a if you think about sheep eating sheep, that's really really hard to fathom. Not saying it's impossible. Probably if they get hungry enough, they would too. And again, pointing toward the future, as we saw up above there, where the Lord says, "I will not deliver them from their hand." He's not going to defend them. And he said, "But indeed, I will give everyone into his neighbor's hand and to the hand of his king." And I'm going to tie that in with down here where they broke the other staff bonds, that I might break the brotherhood or the unity. There was a lot of infighting going on within Israel and within Jerusalem itself before the Romans finally came in and destroyed the city. Things had gotten so bad that inside the walls of Jerusalem, the groups that were infighting, well, actually, they set fires and stuff. They burned up a lot of food that had been stored, long-term storage. They destroyed a lot of the food. They ended up killing thousands of themselves, Jews killing Jews. And then when the Romans laid siege to the city, the siege was worse than it possibly could have been, because they ran out of food really quickly, because due to the infighting, they had destroyed a lot of their own food. So when it talked about the bonds of unity, I broke it. There was a lot of internal strife. So the unity within the Jewish community was already falling apart when the Romans finally came in and leveled the temple and destroyed Jerusalem.
They were actually cannibalizing each other, right? They had
Absolutely.
no food.
Yeah, they ran out of food, so they started eating each other, like here where we talked about let those who are left eat each other's flesh.
Ugh.
That had actually taken place too back in the siege of Jerusalem when the Babylonians sieged. And some speculate it may happen again during the tribulation. As we'll see in Zechariah later, that there's going to be some really bad times coming upon Israel during the tribulation. And so I took my staff beauty and cut it in two, that I might break the covenant which I had made with all the peoples. This is we go back up here, see, they shall attack the land and I will not deliver them. Okay. This goes along with that breaking of the staff beauty. I break the covenant which I have made with all the peoples. These are not talking about the covenants we're familiar with the Lord and Israel and Abraham and Moses. This would be a type of covenant the Lord himself would have known about, that he had restrained the nations around Israel from attacking and destroying Israel up to this point in time. So he had even strained the Romans to a great extent. And then he just removes that, said, okay, I'm removing that covenant I've made with the people, that they will not attack Israel, and let them go. And they did. There were other nations, not just the Romans, that joined with the Romans to help. They were just waiting, enjoying the opportunity to come in and help deal with Israel. We see a similar thing in the in the latter days ahead of us during the tribulation, when the nations join together to come against Israel. There'll be some countries glad to be able to participate in that. They're looking forward to that day when they can attack Israel.
It's real soon.
Now, this one's a little tough here, but it says, the poor of the flock who are watching be you, that was a word of the Lord. So there would have been those who are paying attention and somehow understanding, those are the remnant, so to speak, those who are really listening to Zechariah and the other prophets, and those of the spiritual leaders who were actually listening to the Lord and following the Lord. There were still those in Zechariah's day who would have been looking at this and somehow coming to an understanding that what Zechariah was doing, that he was doing something that was related to the word of the Lord. He wasn't just doing stuff on his own, that somehow it related to Israel, and that it was the Lord who was behind it. So even then, there were people who had some understanding, maybe not total understanding of the prophecy, but they knew that the Lord was speaking through Zechariah. So comes a point where Zechariah says, I said to them, talking to whoever had, he was working for, if it's agreeable to you, give me my wages, and if not, refrain. So he's saying, if you think I should get paid, pay me. But if you're not going to pay me, all right. So in other words, I like what, I don't remember which one of it might have been Chuck Smith saying something about this, about Zechariah was not in this for the money. He was doing this because the Lord had called him to do what he was doing. And it's like, okay, if I get wages out of it, great. If I don't, that's fine too. And so he wasn't doing it for the money. He was doing it because the Lord had called him to do it. But then he tells him, if it's agreeable to you, that would be good in your sight, then give me my wages. And if not, refrain. So they weighed out from our wages 30 pieces of silver. Anybody see any thing in there about 30 pieces of silver? That would stand out really big, right? Especially when we go down here, and the Lord said to me, take that 30 pieces of silver and throw it to the potter.
Yep.
And Zechariah says, and this is kind of sarcastic, says that princely price they set on me. Well, Jesus is called the Prince of Peace, right? So there's, in a sense there. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and I threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. And then I cut in two my other staff bonds that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. And as I pointed out, this was already going on, but it got worse. And when the Romans came in and sent everybody off to all parts of the world, that unity was definitely broken. There was no longer really unity in the Jewish people. It's been that way for a long time. Now, this was interesting. This Exodus 21. And Moses is given some of the laws about an ox goring people to death or being gored. They don't necessarily have to be killed, but if the ox gores a male or female servant, he shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. So that was the price, basically, of a slave, or servant. So that's what the wages were. Was 30 pieces of silver. I thought it was interesting too, and I don't know if I just went too far on my analogies here, but if the ox gores, whoa, Jesus was definitely the servant. He came to be a servant. The ox shall be stoned. In a sense, Jesus was gored. He had a sword stuck in his side. So,
yeah.
But anyway, I think we all see that there. If we know the story about Judas taking the money and trying to give it back to the priests, the people that hired him. And they went, no, we can't take it. That's blood money. We can't take that. You can't bring that into the holy place. So they took the money and bought a potter's field. And that's a field where the potters would actually throw broken pieces of pottery. They also, I think, they use it for burial ground. So
to bury strangers, right?
Yeah, bury the strangers. So I think as we go through there, we can see a lot of the stuff that's going to happen and has already happened for us now in 70 AD, around that time there. And we definitely see the story about Judas and the 30 pieces of silver. Now, Josephus, he talked about the eating of the flesh and let what is dying die and perishing perish. Josephus had written that there were approximately 1 million people killed in the city of Jerusalem when the Romans finally came in to totally destroy it. And they're not saying that the Romans killed all 1 million people, because of thousands of them that they don't even know the number died at their own hand. Remember where the Lord said, I'll give everyone into his neighbor's hand and into the hand of the king. So if you read some of the Old Testament stories where enemies were attacking Israel, where the Lord confused the enemy sometimes and they killed each other. Well, we're seeing that happen to Israel himself, the Jews themselves killing each other. and also to hand it to the king. Obviously, Titus coming in was killing some Jews. There's no doubt about that. And starvation and famine and disease that came during the siege was killing a lot of them. And just kind of an aside here, because we're almost out of time for this week. Josephus was a Jew. I guess you guys knew that. He was of the priestly family. He wasn't the high priest, obviously, but he was a priest, and he had been appointed by the Sanhedrin to be an army commander up in the Galilee area. So they still had some kind of armies and stuff. Even this was during the Roman occupation. And in 67 AD, he was defeated by Vespasian, I think his name, or whoever it was, the Roman general. And Josephus prophesied to him that he would be emperor someday. Well, I guess he liked that prophecy so much, he didn't kill or imprison Josephus, but actually Josephus actually went to the Roman side and traveled with him, and then later traveled with Titus as a record keeper and as a translator. And Josephus, in a lot of times, tried to encourage the people to quit fighting, quit resisting the Romans, and just give up. And of course, they weren't listening. But so he tried to bring peace that way. But that's why we have a lot of the writings of Josephus, because he was a Jew and he was alive during this time, the 70 AD time, and was right there firsthand to record things. So when he says 1 million people died, he must have some kind of evidence that there were a lot of people that died during that siege. So,
Ray, I do have Chuck's notes for verses 10 to 13 if you want to listen to them.
absolutely. Go for it.
Hey, real quick, I got a dash, guys. Appreciate you. Thanks.
All right, Jim.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, Jim.
Bye.
Verse 10 tells us that beauty would be broken and the covenant would also be broken. This prophecy of beauty foretold the day when Jesus the Messiah would be broken, ushering in a new covenant. Zechariah then went on to talk about 30 pieces of silver being the price for him, and the silver being thrown into the Lord's house and to the potter. After Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, he had second thoughts, tried to call off the deal. The priests wouldn't take the money back, so Judas threw it down in the temple. The priests then used the money to buy a potter's field where Judas hanged himself.
Very
And then
good.
he has a little comment at the end, says, can you imagine anyone fulfilling this detailed prophecy accidentally or even on purpose?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. And we do know that this is written as prophecy. I like the concept there that Chuck had, which I like a lot of Chuck's concepts, about the covenant, which I made. We do know that was at the time a new covenant came. The old covenant was done away with. And this could be one of those things, again, where there's a couple of things talked about, because obviously with Jesus' death and resurrection, the old covenant, where the temple and all those things was what they really needed to do, was done away with, especially when the temple was destroyed. And I think it also is the covenant he had made with the nations around there, especially with Rome, that they would not attack the people. So I think there's probably both of those included in that. So, but I'm glad you brought up that point about the new covenant. So that's so critical, the new covenant. I should ask, did you guys have anything there you want to share or talk about on or that section? If not, we can even pick it up again next week if you go back over and you go, yeah, I still got more questions about that. So
There was a lot
I've
there.
got just a quick question. It's really not referred to this, but the Maccabeans, what time period were they doing their thing?
yeah. What was the question? Were you asking? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was the Maccabees. It has nothing to do with this. I'm just kind of curious what time period the Maccabean
I
thing
think the
took place.
Maccabees were around 200 or 150 BC, somewhere in there. And they
BC, okay.
actually, uh, Hasmoneans, I don't know if you've heard that word, but out of the Maccabees, there's a family line called the Hasmoneans or something like that. And they actually
Okay.
set up kings. So they had priests acting as kings. And Israel was fairly autonomous for quite a while,
Okay.
maybe almost 100 years, I think. And they had these kings not set up the way God had said for them to set up, because the king was supposed to come through Judah, right? Not through
Sure.
Levi. They were coming through Levi. But that's another example of infighting that actually Rome had kind of ignored that area for a while. But they were causing so much, or at least, let them kind of rule themselves. But they got into so
Sure.
much infighting between the Sadducees and the Pharisees. So the first time Rome came in to clamp down was because of that. And that put a stop to the Hasmonean kings. So there was no Jewish king. And they were, in God's eyes, would have been illegitimate kings anyway. But those
Sure.
were descendants of the Maccabees. So the Maccabees were priests themselves. So I put an end to that. And then, of course,
So that had been going on for quite a while.
yeah. So their rebellion against Rome was, fairly constant. And it just
Right.
got so bad there that finally Rome had to come in and say, we're just going to do away with your city, do away with your country, and we're going to send you people everywhere. Like the Lord said there in Zechariah, I'm going to sow you among the nations. So,
Right.
but the people won't forget me totally in those nations, and then I'll bring them back. So a lot of them, they're still Jewish lines. They can prove their bloodline when they come back to Israel. So I find that pretty fascinating. So.
The guy he set himself up and he offered oblations and sacrifices in the most holy of holies, and the Maccabees went in there and I guess stopped.
They rose up against Seleucids,
Yes,
and Seleucids were their hierarchy, or whatever you call it, rule had descended down from Alexander the Great, so it was still Greek rule at that time.
yes,
And of course, then the Romans came in later and took over the Greek rule. So
yeah. That's where they get that Hanukkah with the oil. Is that from when the Maccabees went in there and had that revolt?
yeah, that's when they cleansed the temple. They actually was celebrated those 2 days, or a week, or whatever it is they celebrate.
Yeah, and the oil never ran out.
Yeah, so that was celebration of the cleansing of the temple.
Yes,
Because that Gentile had come in there and defiled the temple.
the pig.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we see God's hand in that. He was definitely with the Maccabees during that uprising. So,